Yeah, so let's start. Sergey had a topic, first one, about Adobe Stock integration.
Yes, hi everyone. I would like to present the design for Adobe Stock integration project. Let me share my screen. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Good. So we are going to start to kick off the Magento Adobe Stock integration project at Imagine. However, we are already working on design and the basic functionality that we are going to start on. And here are the design overview. Basically, Magento Adobe Stock integration is going to add an ability for admin user to use assets or media from Adobe Stock. Right now, we are talking about images from admin panel. The UI for Adobe Stock integration will be accessible from the media gallery. So it will be available in all the functional areas in Magento where media gallery is available. It's CMS, content, VZV editors, category, image. There is no ability to use image for product from the media gallery. However, that ability can be added to the product page in admin panel. The integration will be provided via Adobe Stock integration meta package that will contain from the beginning five modules. There is an API and implementation module for the basic functionality that will be shared and reused and used by all the following modules. And API and implementation modules for the image integration, and also a separate module for admin UI of image integration. Here you can see the relations between the modules. Basically, admin will interact with the UI provided by the module Adobe Stock Image Admin UI module. That will be based on Magento module UI and UI components. And that UI will interact with API provided by the core Adobe Stock integration module and image Adobe Stock integration module. There are separate flows that will be covered by the integration. Here is a brief overview of the flows. So basically, it's search, including lots of filters that are available in Adobe Stock API. The authorization for purchasing and licensing of images. In this case, we'll use the Adobe identity management system that will authenticate and authorize a user and then call the callback and then return the callback to our application. That is also an API. Then there will be an endpoint for licensing an image that will be available after user is authorized. And finally, save an image. Actually, there will be two separate flows for saving or downloading an asset from Adobe Stock. The first flow is saving a complementary asset or a preview. That's for images that a watermarked image that doesn't require funding, that doesn't require purchase or license, but it's low resolution and has a watermark. And admin user will be also able to license the image and download the full licensed version of the asset. We are going to use the framework provided by Adobe Stock API, the library provided by Adobe, basically. It's Adobe Stock API libphp package that will help us to communicate with Adobe Stock API.
Rika, can I ask some question?
Yeah, sure.
What's the reason to proxy Adobe API through Magento?
Through the backend. The reason for proxying Adobe Stock API through Magento is, first of all, the extensibility. And second, it's security, because we are going to store the API key on backend side and will not share it to the front end. And also we will be able to reuse existing functionality of UI components and other components available in Magento.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I also have seen your question about the data storage. The comment, so what's the reason to store the information? Oh, sorry. The reason echo.
Here.
Is it okay right now? Yeah, looks like that's okay. Good. So the reason to store information on Magento site is to have this information available for downloaded assets and to be able to display the image and the attributes and use these attributes without additional cost to Adobe Stock API.
So technically, it's like caching of Adobe API.
Yeah, it is kind of indexing in this point of view, because yes, we can get the information from the API. However, in order to get this information or regain it after the image was first saved, we have to store at least some basic information about this image, like media ID, to be able to identify it on Adobe Stock site, and also licensing status. That is part of the data that we are storing.
But why we need this information?
We need this information. Do you mean media ID and licensing status?
Yeah.
We need this information to, like, in the situation when, well, basically we need this information to get additional attributes of the asset if we will need them.
Okay, thank you.
But I read on the website there is a possibility to cancel your license or your model, and if we caching that locally, then maybe we get a problem with if somebody cancel their model or monthly payment, and we cannot check this maybe we need some cron shop for that or checking for valid license, but I don't see currently any information in this paper about how is if somebody cancel their monthly payment.
So as far as I understand, even if somebody cancels their subscription on Adobe Stock, the images that this account have already downloaded are staying with him, and the information and data that we are storing on our site is not the information that is provided together with license. It's public information that is returned via search API endpoint. So licensing paid part of data is only the full size asset or full size image file.
Okay, but if I understand correctly, then we cache a smaller version in the database or something like on a file system and asking the service on any front-end call about the full-size service, full-size image, or how it should works.
So basically, before the admin user authorize Adobe Stock and before he purchase a concrete image, he is able to save the preview and use it on Magento pages. After he purchase that image and license it, he's able to download the full version and use it instead of preview or in addition to preview as part of Magento content. But we are storing, in case the preview is downloaded and saved, we are storing it on our file system. We're going to store it in our file system, and in case licensed image is downloaded, it's also stored on the file system.
So as I understand, this functionality, it will have a UI that would allow to insert image in a WYSIWYG, for instance, and like shown here. But there would be also a UI that would allow to upload new images, to purchase new images, to license images, right?
Yeah, so basically the UI that will allow to download the image from the screen that you see right now on the page is just a button that admin user will press, and the image will be inserted to Media Gallery. Media Gallery is behind the slide window shown on this demo. And in case of licensing, it's also an additional button that from a user point of view does exactly what almost the same what download preview button does, but it uses the authorized account on Adobe Stock to download the full version and decrease the amount of credits that authorized user have on Adobe Stock side.
Would it make sense to implement this not in Magento but in a separate service, and Magento would use UI and talk to that service? This would allow us to maintain this stock integration separately from Magento.
But it will be an extension. It's not a part. It's not a core model.
Yes, but still we don't release extensions separately right now, and there is a like a we're trying to, as I understand, go to the direction where we can release new functionality independently from Magento. This looks to me very similar with target, like target integration. Target integration also originally was supposed to be a Magento extension, and what it does, it just in admin you can manage some entities via API in Target, and then you have on the storefront you can see product recommendations. So this looks a little bit simpler than Target, but with Target we decided to move it to a separate service to be able to maintain it independently.
What part with service might include? Because like you have here the adapter to communicate with Adobe Stock API and like admin UI. That's all. Like, do you need to bootstrap all Magento to have this service?
No, it would be not the service would be not on Magento. It would use some other technologies. Like we would be able to use React, Spectrum.
How do you propose to integrate this UI to Magento? Because it's like it's functionality for admin to upload such images for catalog, VCV, etc.
Maybe when you click this button, it would open iframe with that would load UI of this service.
But anyway, you will have some part on Magento side, some integration. So how you propose to release it separately?
I don't know if it makes sense. I'm just asking a question, but it can be the part. It would make sense when we can make this extension in Magento very small. That would not have to change when we need to make changes to this functionality. So if we can make if we can implement all of the functionality in the service, and in Magento there would be just a generic proxy, for instance, iframes that load this functionality, and that logic or that code would never have to change, then it would make sense to implement it as a service. If we will have logic in both places that we will have to maintain, then probably it doesn't make sense to implement it as a service. In the case of target integration, we were able to move almost all of the backend part to a service, which was the part that would most likely change, and the only logic that was part of Magento extension was just some glue code that would load this UI in Magento admin and proxy calls from admin to target service, and some small code on the front end. This places recommendations.
Okay, maybe let's have this discussion offline later.
So you just would be good to consider it.
Maybe let's pass it.
I just want to add a comment. In this case, we decided to implement it in Magento without an iframe, because like Adobe Stock integration is actually, Adobe Stock API is actually that third-party service that provides the images, but we wanted to reuse the Magento UI components functionality. In this case, we are going to implement the UI based on listing UI component, so Magento, basic Magento UI grid. That grid will be slightly customized. Customized in terms of we are going to change maybe some templates, remove headers from it, and introduce several new column types, column UI components for listing to use. We are going to deliver these this UI component listing and columns that will enable to render a grid for images like you see on the screen, to UI module, to Magento module UI, and reuse them in the extension that we are going to implement.
Okay. So I have one more question. So I can see filters button. Is this for facet filters that are available on Adobe Stock website, or what filters are these?
Yeah, so this is filters component of listing UI component, and yeah, we are going to use it for to map the those filters to Adobe Stock available filters.
Okay, so it will be similar functionality to what you can do in your account in Adobe Stock, right? Because it's just searching by keyword is very limited, and they provide rich variety of facet filters.
Yeah, we will be actually. This is a brief introduction. We have more detailed design documentation on the Adobe Stock integration wiki, and yeah, we'll have several filters, like by image type, by filter by color, and so on. Like I basically, considering the search design, we are going to implement the request builder that will map the filters coming from the UI component to the request to Adobe Stock API that will have an ability to extend the number of filters. So basically, we are going to implement several filters from the beginning of the project, and then the filters can be extended by injecting them into the configuration of the request builder to map it to the API and to the UI component to display it on the user interface side.
And is there going to be a way to navigate from Magento admin to Adobe Stock account? Because I'm looking at Photoshop integration, for example, and you can easily navigate into your account without having to log in separately. Like, will there be such possibility here?
I think no, because we would like to make the integration as easy and lightweight as possible for the admin user, so that everything can be done on Magento and there is no need to navigate out of Magento admin panel interface.
Yeah, in case you completely replicate functionality, yes. But at least in case of Photoshop, they don't have all features in Photoshop, and if you need more features, you just navigate to web implementation.
Yeah, so basically in our case, the whole idea of the extension is to use the content from the Adobe Stock. So the idea is to open the CMS page, right? Put the cursor in the WYSIWYG and easily just open the Adobe Stock search, find the appropriate image, and with one click of a button, add this image to the correct place in the WYSIWYG. I cannot imagine really a good use case for that will require admin user to navigate to Adobe Stock site.
So I believe, I'm not sure if you're going to show, but like there is detailed licensing information and some other metadata, which I don't know if you're going to display all the same content which is available on the web, but I used Adobe Stock from Photoshop, and usually you can see like the most details only when you go on the web. You cannot see them in the Photoshop. So if you implement it in the way that you have all the details in Magento, then it's fine. But I believe there could still be use cases when you need more information.
Okay, maybe let's discuss it offline with product owner as well. I just want to move on to other topics, and probably we also need to go to another meeting, as I understand. So thank you for the presentation. If you like now, at least everybody's aware about what's going on, and you can ping Sergey about with any questions. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for attention. Please contact me if you have any questions. I will try to answer them. And I will be thankful for any comments as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next topic is from me. Let me share my screen. So I wanted to share a proposal about simplified composer project. So what's the problem right now? The problem right now is that we have Magento project, let's say community edition or whatever edition, and this is how composer JSON looks like. So we have all those definitions here. The problem with that is it becomes difficult to upgrade Magento because you cannot only upgrade a version of Magento product, you also need to go and check dependencies here because they may be conflicting now. And also another problem is that some sections, they just don't belong to this project. For example, auto-loading, like at least most of this should go to specific packages that provide those files. So soon, for example, if you need to change something with auto-loading of framework or something else, you need to go and also change it here, which doesn't make sense. So my proposal basically is to simplify it to this. So that's just for visibility, and the document has more details on how exactly I came to this specific version. But this version will be pretty simple. I propose to have a template for the project. Edition can be substituted by the publication tool. Version also will be there. And that's basically it. So it's very simple. Every time a project owner needs to update Magento, the only thing required is to update version. If there are any other dependencies that are required for that project, it will be responsibility of the owner to maintain those. So what are the specific changes that I propose? First of all, remove anything related to development, because so like my statement and what I like the main idea of this proposal is that this composer JSON project should be for production purposes, and for development purposes we have either our Magento 2 repository, which is for contributors, and that composer.json file remains the same, so nothing changes there. Or if we say about customizators and extension developers, they should be creating composer.json files based on their needs. Whatever tooling they use, for example, PHP unit, they include in their project. This is not something that Magento should maintain. We probably can provide some recommendations as part of our documentation, but my idea, at least, that we shouldn't provide this as part of our project. To remove everything that is in dev, remove auto-load parts that cover development scenarios. So we have auto-load dev, I think, right now. Remove Git-based Magento paths, so like what we have here. So those things are not needed in production. Yeah, I think, okay, setup is needed, but it should be moved to the different package, to the base package that actually owns those files. Like we need to remove those parts and move component-specific parts to corresponding composer packages. So based on that, this is the result that I got. which is much simpler. Any concerns?
Yeah, I have one thought related to this. Let's say we have right now, top of my head, I have three types of, let's say, developers. So the first one is core contributors. The second one, okay, let's say not developers, users. The second one is somebody who is using Magento on production, and extension developers. So we understand for core contributors, they use Git. With this proposal, this is for production only. And what about extension developers? So how, when they are using Composer installation as well, but this approach doesn't cover their needs, because they want everything, like they want to be able not to just develop the extension for Composer-based installation, they want to be able to test their code.
So I think that extension developers should specify whatever is needed for their project and whatever tools they are using. We can provide recommended or some base version of Composer JSON file, but I think we can provide it as part of documentation. They can just create files from that. That's my idea. We can have probably separate project for that. But again, the consequences will be the same as we have right now, that all those dependencies should be maintained somehow.
Yeah, but the most projects working like if we have we asking Git or GitHub for give me version 2.2 or 2.3 and installing them on a container, and then we installing our extension there and run the test over the integration. If we clean up this, it can be cool for most projects, but for extension developers, the working process, like you have a you ask GitHub, hey, install me 2.2 with all dependencies and run the integration tests, can be complex, I think.
Why it will be complex? So you will need to do the same thing as you do right now, probably. Though I don't know if you will need all those required dev dependencies, because those are ones used by Magento. Maybe you will, because those are tests.
Sorry. I believe this changes, breaking changes for integration scenario, because if we currently have some deployment scenario and use Magento like Composer install, create project with dependency and just currently put code in app code. So these changes will break this scenario.
Yes, we should communicate it in advance.
Also, how we can make sure if somebody installing this kind of dev dependencies, because currently I think some agencies run also static tests on their CI over installing dev dependencies. How we can make sure we get the correct versions of each dev dependencies for the correct Magento version. We need some extra meta packages or something like that to make sure we can install the same dependencies for local development and checking the code on CI, and then we deploy the stuff on test or production. Then we don't need the dev dependencies. But if you have a complex CI, it breaks, I think. Also, we cannot make sure to get the correct version of Magento coding standard, get the correct version of PHP CS, get maybe the new PHP stun stuff in the correct version. We cannot make sure if we remove stuff from the Composer JSON.
Okay. So as I understand, everybody, like you say that first of all, you still want to have some composer JSON for development purposes, so you know what are the dependencies. And second, the transition between dev environment or testing environment and production, right, is not clear. It is not clear because you still want to run tests in dev environment, and then you want to move it to production where you don't need tests. Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, it's mostly, we have different developers and the CI system, and we using installing the dev dependencies and running tests over Crumb PHP or something like that outside of own projects, but we're using the dev dependencies from Magento. We have outside of our projects a composer JSON with Crumb or some additional CI stuff, and then we're using the internal dev dependencies from Magento to running static tests and code analysis, and we already using, and this change will break our mostly all new projects from us.
Okay, and so yeah, and one of the questions: so how do you move from development to production? You don't need tests on production, right? So you shouldn't have these dependencies.
Yeah, if we build a package for test or production, we don't install the dev dependencies of Magento. But if we run tests on CI, we install them.
Okay. So once again, so on production, you just don't require dev dependencies, right?
Yep.
What you're saying. Okay. What do you do right now with upgrades? So right now it's there is a problem that when you upgrade, you need to go and fix dependencies in required dev because they are just incompatible. So you need to go and fix those dependencies to match to the new version. And this doesn't happen automatically. You need to probably go and find new Magento's project and match those dependencies, or how do you do it?
Yep.
Can we solve this problem somehow with meta package for all dev dependencies? Because here, from my understanding, the best developer experience is when you have in required dev everything that you need for testing, including MFTF test packages, including all of the framework for tests, etc. So if you want to have this, you install everything. If you don't want to, you just skip dev dependency. Probably meta package with all of the test frameworks packages will help us to solve this problem.
Okay. Maybe right now we are also working on a composer plugin that actually synchronizes all those dependencies. If it will work well, that can be also a solution. So I think it's close to being released, so you can try it. And like my impression was that we don't want to have all those dependencies, but as I understand, you still say that okay, we are using those, and on production you just skip any dev dependencies. That's my understanding. Okay. So I have some feedback. I'll look what we should do, or maybe do nothing with it and proceed with what we have. Another question. I think it still makes sense to move those parts out of here. I don't know about output dev. I'm not sure if it can work only from the root or not. But I believe you should be able to remove all auto loading from here, right?
maybe makes sense to move all this to Magento base package?
I think it's different. It depends. So like this one probably, this one should be just removed, for example. Yes, this one is in base package, so I have details on where to move what. Like this one probably should move to page builder. This one should be just removed. This one moved to base package. This also to the base package. This one probably to Magento framework. How about this non-composer component registration, PHP, by the way? I think it's useful for customizations as well. So like for development purposes, it makes sense, as I understand. For production, it shouldn't probably.
Actually, on our cloud, almost all CI use it for Magento customization, specific for project.
Okay, so then we should keep this one, right?
Yep.
Move conflict ESG and Bluefoot to page builder.
Why?
You don't want page builder to be used on community edition, but on community edition, you don't have page builder on community edition.
How is it related to this? So like the only what this says is that if you have page builder, you shouldn't have Bluefoot, right?
We also don't want Bluefoot to be used anymore.
But that's probably something. So you say that we specify conflict with Bluefoot because we don't want people to install Bluefoot. Okay, let's discuss it. It sounds a little bit strange as a solution, but yeah, let's discuss it. Okay, so
One of the reasons is page builder, another reason is that you just don't want.
okay, but this one. Okay, yeah, let's discuss this one. Okay, so we can still remove. Okay, require them keep it and remove all auto loading from here. Move to corresponding packages. Okay. Let me add the last comment, and yeah, that's it. We can probably move to the next topic if there are no other questions. I think, Olena, you had some topic.
Yeah, it's like back to PHP basics. Sometimes it's related to coding standard. We have proposals from community like to add some PHP native functions to the list of insecure, or to add something to discouraged list. Shall we discuss all such questions during architecture's meeting, or how we can handle this? Or do you think it's the first question and then a specific one? Discuss, okay. So we have a proposal to add JSON encode and decode to the list of insecure functions. Unfortunately, the person who has this proposal cannot attend this meeting, but I think the idea is clear. What do you think about this? Right now,
something with your mic, I think. It's good to hear what you're saying. There's a lot of noise.
I wish I can handle it. So the question is, should we add JSON encode and decode to the list of insecure functions?
Actually, we should not add to it to insecure because it's not about security. Yeah. But I agree that we should avoid to use JSON encode and decode in modules. So maybe we have another list.
Yes, we have two types of rules: with insecure functions and discouraged functions. Insecure functions.
Okay, per second.
Yeah, they all came from previous just PHP unit static tests, and here's the list, like assert, exec, pass through, unserialize, etc. So
and I believe it makes sense to move serialize function also, because unserialized is unsecure, but serialized is secure because it's just create string.
okay, what do you think about random srand, mt, srand functions? They are also
Yeah, as random and it's secure related stuff. So main reason why is not recommend to use it security.
Okay, any other thoughts about moving serialized to the list of encouraged instead of unsecure? Insecure.
Serialized. So what's with
I'll
serialized?
keep it here.
What's with serialized? So like why we don't want to use it? Because somebody can start unserializing or what it is?
Yes.
So what's the purpose of serialize if you cannot unserialize?
I mean, but it will be a chain reaction. If you will try to unserialize, then you will get a problem. If you serialize, as I understand, there is no problem. I don't know, maybe you will be sending it somewhere. I don't know why you would do it, but I would imagine that if we prohibit unserialized, it will be impossible to use serialized anyways. Then I would just mention serialize at all. I don't know.
Yeah, it makes sense to send some serialized link to other system that can secure and serialize it. There are possible scenarios.
Okay,
For
so
example, if you decide to integrate with external system that in API use some PHP serialized string.
Our wrappers for serialize and serialize. So maybe, and I remember we were going to add another test that would check that you don't use PHP functions directly. So maybe
we discussed to move it from insecure
to discouraged
to
to the list of like by the list there is huge list of.
Okay, yes, let's move to discouraged just because it's native PHP function that we don't want to use directly.
As well as serialize, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Does this like JSON encode functions will be scanned for all Magento code or just for models and framework? Like, do we include our tests for scanning?
In case if insecure, yes, all of the files. In case of the list of discouraged functions, we skip test files.
Yeah, but even in tests, sometimes we have some tests where we use execute and we just keep.
Okay, so you have a conclusion, right, for this?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, good. Anything else?
I have a question. It's about backwards compatibility. So this is a code review. It's a template PHP template rendering engine functionality. So we added a new parameter that will be available in the template via escaper. So escaper is a new variable that will be available in the template, just like block. So it's backwards compatible with old extensions, so it will not break any old extensions. But technically, this is backwards compatible change because if your extension depends on a minor version of the framework and you start using this escape variables, then your extension would not be compatible with previous patch releases. We currently don't track this kind of issues with static tests, so I don't know. I'm not sure how bump inversion would work in this case, but I guess my question is, like, do we all agree that this is backwards incompatible change and it makes sense? It would be better to deliver it into the fork instead of patch release.
This is minor.
This is minor change. This is minor change.
Yeah, patch release is obviously backward compatible. So it's same as adding new API.
How many currently files inherited from this template engine?
I don't know if there are any files inherited from this, but it exposes variable in all of the HTML templates. So the motivation for adding this parameter for exposing this right now is that a lot of teams doing security work, they add escaping in all of the templates, and they use escaping methods on the abstract block, like escape HTML, escape attributes. So in the scope of this change, all of these methods deprecated on the abstract block, and instead added a new parameter escaper that will be available in the templates. The escaping is not really a responsibility of abstract block, so this is a good change. But like, I would propose to do it into the form.
But like, what currently the dev team supposed to do? Do they still supposed to use the deprecated functionality on the level of abstract block and increase the technical debt?
It's
I believe they should not include this in code base until next release.
It would be very easy to fix this abstract, this technical debt. I think you would just search for block escape, HTML escape JS, and replace it with escape HTML escape JS. Just search, replace, and it will fix technical debt. But yeah. Use it for developers. Someone will start using this in the template, and then this extension will not work with previous patch releases of Magento.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I guess so.
Also, I believe we need to discuss maybe instead of add a variable to template, we can extend our template in engine and provide additional way to escape variable. Because one the problem that currently we don't escape data by default. So better to make it in another way. So by default we escape all this, and only for case where we don't need escape, we need to provide the way to do not escape data.
There was yeah, it's a good idea. There was research on this, and I think I will try to find research on this, but we didn't find an easy solution for this. I think the possible solution was to do generation, code code generation for the templates, where we would parse templates and wrap all of the output in escape HTML and save on the different location and include the template instead of original, where we don't have any escape. And the other option was introduce another rendering engine like Twig. And that was better solution, but we decided not to do it because it would be it would like increase complexity of Magento. We already have everywhere PHP, HTML templates. You just start using a different template engine.
And even if you figure out how to implement that, how do you know which escaping function to use? Because in different cases you need different escaping functions.
Yeah.
Like automatically, I don't see how you can do it.
In most cases, you can do escape
Escape
HTML, but in some cases you will have to use different function, and you will have to maybe, if you know that you need to use different function, you will have to manually specify that in these places you want to use different function.
Yeah, it means that you cannot do it gradually. If you enable it automatically for the whole system, you may just get bugs if you don't go through every template and verify all escaping.
Okay, I don't know. I think, Andrei, if you want, you can probably ping Igor and discuss other options. For this, we decided that this is a breaking change, so we don't do it in patch release. This cannot be caught by our tools, right? By SVC. So we need to make sure that minor version will be bumped. Right? I asked you to check it. Okay, so again, it will be in the future. So it's not urgent because we are not going to include it in the release, but we need to.
Do you mean fix tooling or just make sure?
No,
that
just bump it in the future. Maybe just add a command to it just for the future. Okay, I guess that's all. We have only 1 minute left, so I don't think we will be able to discuss anything else. Thanks everyone for joining. I'll share recording later and see you next time.
Bye.